A very good morning on behalf of India FinTech Forum. I am Aditya Rajkothari and I have Miss Monica Jasuja, who is an executive committee member at India FinTech Forum. Monica is a digital business executive with over 20 years of global experience in strategizing, defining, leading, building, and deploying commercially valuable innovative software products and solutions, primarily in financial services. A very warm welcome to FinTech Leadership Series.
Thank you so much, Aditya, and thank you for giving me this opportunity to be here and speaking to so many of you. Thank you.
Coming to my first question, tell us a little bit about your background and how you became interested in the FinTech industry.
Actually, I didn't. And this is a best part about my journey, which is I kind of stumbled into FinTech almost by accident. And it wasn't called this buzzword back when I started. So I always like to now use this as a flex, which is that I started out in FinTech much before it was cool, which is great. But I actually never thought about payments. I never thought about payment tech. I never thought about payments in general, or even technology behind financial services. I started my career as a product manager in a mobile solutions firm. Earlier, I was a software engineer, but I did realize that product management is really my calling. And when I got this opportunity to be part of PayPal as one of the first product managers in the India division, as well as, of course, one of the first women PMs, I did take this on. In fact, I was asked which vertical I'd like to be in, and I was far, far away from the tech side and chose to be on the consumer payments, but more associated with how consumers are onboarded and how they actually use the application, which was actually a desktop-based website, right? So that's how I started on. But I think over a period of time, once you start understanding how consumers are actually interacting with your product, you do become interested in what's happening behind the scenes. And that actually has been something, the quest to learn and really understand the fundamental pipes of how this actually happens helped me move along and actually traverse to different parts of PayPal, where I worked on the money movement side. And that gave me a ringside view as well as an understanding of how money actually moves. And it's a most fascinating world. And therefore, I actually consider myself more of a payment nerd than I consider myself as a payments person, because I'm more interested in how to make this happen and work over scale and for a larger set of people. So that's taken, and that kind of has helped define my career, go from PayPal to MasterCard, and then in Tech Mahindra Comviva, which is a leader in mobile payments and mobile money solutions, and then into GoTo Financial.
That's great to hear. What do you see as the future of digital payments? What new technologies and innovations do you think will emerge in this space?
So I'm going to be a little bit of a devil's advocate and probably a very unpopular person by saying this, but I actually don't feel that digital payments needs anything new. The reason I say this is because we are hyperbolic on this narrative that we need to keep inventing things, and as a product leader, I've been there's an immense amount of pressure to be like a junkie who's creating new things every single year and innovating and almost being in a 24/7 hustle to keep doing something new. I personally feel, and I think the pandemic and after has shown us that we are now in a stage where we need to do the things right. We need to do the right things more efficiently. And we need to do the most efficient things in a cost-effective manner.
Right.
I think the whole focus has moved from doing new things to doing the same things done differently or done in a new way, and done so that you can reduce the cost and increase the efficiency. I keep saying this all the time, and it makes me very unpopular, which is that fintech is, and even in payments, is not really rocket science. We're not here to solve world hunger. We're really not even here to solve the diseases of the world which are taking over. We are really here to make your life a little bit easier and probably give you a little bit of joy that you're able to use an instrument when you need it the most. For example, when people say that, I was able to use my card, and I myself share this very personal story. I was able to use my card at a hospital location where I had to pay this huge sum of money and I had credit. That is a life-changing experience for a person who's in payments, because that's what we work for, that payments happen seamlessly, especially when you need it, not when you are looking to pay for a coffee. Everybody does that. So honestly, I feel that this is the time where a lot of us are focusing on what's deeper and goes beneath the hood. And that is why you're seeing this huge emphasis on infrastructure, on payment rails, on being able to reduce the cost of payments, I mean, being able to reduce inefficiencies, reduce the middlemen, CBDCs, government stepping in, infrastructure rails being produced. So all of this is kind of hinting to the time where payments almost is something that becomes so invisible that you and I never care about it. Of course, we do care about it in terms of cybersecurity, what it means for us, but you're not obsessed about whether you're using X versus Y. You're more obsessed about can I and do I have the money? Do I need to pay before? Do I need to pay now? Do I need to pay later? And why do I need to choose? Why do I choose to pay the way I choose to pay? So I think these are some of the considerations that the industry is overall looking at. I personally also feel one more thing, that cybersecurity is the way of the future. AI and ML and any other kind of technology is just an aid to make sure that you and I remain secure. It is aid to make sure that criminals don't get access to both our data as well as to our money. And that is going to be one of the fundamental pillars of how the technologies are going to help build the payments business into being an effective one, even more effective than it already is, and a bigger one.
Right. What are some ethical considerations that product managers must take into account when creating products?
This is a great question. There's a lot of literature now which is being produced, especially around financial products, because there's a huge emphasis on being ethically right in doing so. Now, there are very sneaky ways in which you can make people lose their money. And don't get me wrong, lose their money does not mean it happens without consent, but it can happen in a way that consumers get so used to a particular way of paying that they sometimes forget that the payment has been made. We've heard of voice payments. We've heard of course, a lot of those viral cases where voice payments have happened when they were not intended to, etc. But the virality part aside, I think we have to be able to, both as product leaders as well as industry ecosystem people, we need to consider how payments are used, especially for the edge cases. These are people who are not digitally financially literate. Now, digital literacy is very different from financial literacy, and when you put both of them together, they are completely different. And I know that you're working on this, so
Yeah.
perhaps I'm sure there are going to be a few questions around it. There can be an illiterate person who is very digitally savvy, but they may not have the right tools to know or how to use this, especially on mobile phones and other kind of devices.
Right.
So we have to be very clear that, like, for example, UPI has created this huge set of products which appeals to different TGs. When you're creating them, you have to be very clear on what kind of experience you provide, and therefore how you habituate users to building and using them. Just because you and I are technology nerds does not mean that everybody is. And therefore, as a product leader, you have to keep in mind that as you're making things simple, sometimes adding friction in almost deliberately is good for business. जैसे बोलते हैं दाग अच्छे हैं, it is actually good for you. And therefore, you need to keep this in mind, that ethically you need to do the right thing. And just because the business, which is a bottom line, will benefit because people spend more, is not necessarily the right way of looking at building the right kind of financial behaviors, because consumers, once they go off a payment method, they'll never come back to it. So I think it's very important to keep these things in mind, and therefore PM should have a maker checker process when they're creating products, to have compliance and legal, not just keep saying no to them when they're trying to create new things, create innovative things, but being that voice of reason in the room and sometimes saying, maybe this will not pass a smell test of a regulator. Maybe this is not something that is the right thing to do for a country or for a business. So I think we should keep those things in mind.
Definitely. In your opinion, what are some biggest challenges that fintech companies face when it comes to regulatory compliance?
I think fintechs don't like regulatory compliance because they believe that it's one of those necessary evils, and it slows down the pace of innovation. At the same time, of course, they are more than happy to be compliant, because while in certain countries and in certain kind of product scenarios, innovation has always been faster than regulation. Regulation always has a way of catching up, and when it's about people's money, or there is money involved, even if it is business or it's G2C payments or it's G2B payments, typically the governments get involved. So I understand the whole decentralization race that we are in. But I truly believe that until we are in a race where money is so physical, at the same time, there is a lot of money where there's a lopsided relationship that we have with money. The rich have too much and the poor have too little. I don't think governments are going out of this game. And thereby, it's important for fintechs to not only start behaving and believing that innovators are also the regulators, and regulators are also playing the innovation game, which is already happening with a lot of the governments and the central banks actually disrupting huge markets. India is a prime example of that. But it's important for fintechs to also believe that the regulators are putting in these safeguards, because they're actually trying to almost create a safe environment where fintechs can rule. And fintechs can rule, but within the gamut of compliance, not outside of it. And that's why financial services as an industry is so difficult, because you have to be compliant and at the same time you have to be innovative, and you have to be the darling of customers, whether it is consumers or businesses. So it's a very hard industry, unlike others, where regulators don't have this kind of involved play. But having said that, I think most regulators are playing this very consultative as well as collaborative and cooperative role with fintechs, where they have regulatory hubs, they have innovation hubs that are directly working with fintechs. So I think we should work with them rather than working against them.
Right. What suggestions do you have to improve financial and digital literacy rate among the Gen Z population in the world?
First and foremost, I think we should need to make it a part of a school curriculum, but that's going to be a major overhaul of how education works. So I don't think that's happening anytime soon. But there's a strong emphasis, even with parents, making sure that children, and when I say children, I mean not just toddlers, right? Or people who are below 10 and 12 and are not teens, but even teens understand where and how they're spending their money. While they're very digitally literate, because obviously everybody takes to their mobile devices very quickly, I think it's important that they understand and have a very positive relationship with money. Once they start doing that, they will be able to value what they are doing, and therefore their financial literacy is going to be not based on how much they are spending, but why they are spending, and therefore also how much they are saving. I think we, on the other side of the divide pre 2020, were very focused on a lot of, building the kind of, as assets for children to leave behind, etc. Now everybody is more focused on what I do and how I do things should be able to set a right example, which is also very, very good, which is also forcing the parents and the older generation to take to technology, but be able to safeguard themselves. So Gen Z, while they are digitally literate, I think they need to put an emphasis on financial literacy and know that, a fire and retiring early and all these things are really great for you. Saving money is really great for you. Investing money is really great for you, but put the emphasis on yourself to learn, rather than depending on financial influencers, depending on the internet to gather all this information
Right.
from. Put the onus on you to actually read and understand. Like, don't fall into the trap where you're losing money and therefore losing trust. Because once I lose your trust and banks lose their trust, banks are here because they're doing their job. Fintechs are here because they're doing their job. But you and I also need to do our own jobs before we put all our trust in them, and then we feel that we've been taken for a ride. And that's exactly what has happened to the crypto industry.
Right. Yeah.
I'm not either shaming them or saying that we need to support them. It's for each one of us to decide whether we are in it or we are outside of it, instead of telling us somebody told me and that's why I invested. I don't think that's the right way of making any sound financial decision.
Right. How do you plan to attract and retain top talents in a competitive market like Asia? And how do you promote diversity and inclusion?
So, as far as talent is concerned, I feel that talent is also now very clear about what their priorities are. Of course, 2 years ago, we were in a race for the person who was the highest bidder in terms of a business willing to pay huge amount of sum and of both money as well as the perks around it to be able to attract talent. I think now talent also believes and they understand they have a way of working. They're very, very clear about what they want. They're also very clear about what they don't want. I think providing a culture which allows talent to nurture them to and nurtures talent through the career ladder is important. Second, it's important to be able to note that we all are in different generations. Every 2 years it seems to be a new generation, so you need to be able to honor, acknowledge and respect the differences that the new generations are bringing in. At the same time, the newer generations also have the onus of understanding how the older generations have worked and to be able to work together. But this is where I really honestly believe that the talent as the culture of the company can help the talent and enable it to become an essential support for the business instead of an inhibitor, because there is a talent race everywhere and it's going to continue for a while. Therefore, the onus is on both the leaders within a company to from the top down to behave the way that they want the company culture to develop. At the same time, for Gen Z and others to also be open to understanding why things work a certain way and be open and receptive to a little bit of change. Yes, it's going to be one of those times where we are all learning together, but all of us are trying. And as far as the gender diversity and gap is concerned, because we are obviously heading towards an important milestone day in our calendars, I truly believe that the diversity is not as stark in tech anymore. And that's not because tech has become more open, but I think the enablement as well as the access to tech has increased, which is much beyond cities. And what that does is it's obviously a huge attraction because of the pay scales and everything else, and how quickly you can grow into your careers. I think we still need to solve for the leaky pipeline, especially in the middle, because what happens is that there are a lot of women in engineering colleges more than ever. They're obviously having their first jobs in tech, which is more than ever. But the question is, what happens after? And if you're not able to solve for it, we'll not be able to solve for women at the top, which is women in leadership positions, and thereby inspiring and creating space for other women and almost pulling them up to the position that they are in. So it's a huge disabler for all of us who are here, because we don't find women in the middle and above. But I have to say this, that some of the onus is on us as leaders, some of the onus is on the ecosystem, but it's also equally on the women. I think some women are just stronger than men. That's physically how, not physically in terms of how they are developed, how they are structured, but in terms of their resilience. I think it's a lot for us women as well to really push and come back to the workforce, especially when there are a lot of primary concerns, both health and otherwise, of family members that we need to take care of. And COVID has shown us that there is tremendous pressure for women to do work outside of work just to be able to survive and keep the family going. I think these are the concerns that we need to address, and both employees within the organization need to acknowledge and respect these changes as well as these differences that we have, and keep the women at work. I'm not saying that you give favorable treatment to them, but at least understand that these are concerns. And therefore, the return to work programs for women, some of them are very successful. I feel that, and I wish all women were to use this opportunity to try and come back to work as much as possible. Use the time to upskill, because all of us are learning on the job, regardless of whether we are men or women. But if you fall off work for some time, the industry just changes. And I think that's just a reality we all have to accept. But I have to give credit. The government has done its job by putting in legal regulations. The industry has to do its job further. And each one of us who is here needs to be able to provide a helping hand, if not a lend an ear, so that we can get more women back to the workforce and make them believe that they really can do this.
That's great to hear. Throughout your professional journey, what are some of your key lessons you have learned and how they have shaped your approach towards leadership?
I'm a firm believer in empathy as well as kindness. I'm not saying this because they are great words to say, but I firmly believe that whatever you get, you should give back to. Because I've started in a generation in which we had very little. So whenever we got something, it was literally our responsibility to keep giving back, because you needed other people to be pulled out from where you have come from. I even believe that till today. I spend a lot of time in mentoring and coaching. And that's not because I don't have anything else that I can spend my time on. I could be Netflixing as well. But I truly believe that when you have and you've been given this very important responsibility, which comes with experience, it is my responsibility to share back. And this is why COVID has been such a big enabler for many of us who did not have access to mentees. Now, suddenly, because of technology, you can, and anybody can reach out to you, and you can reach out to anyone who needs help and who wants help. But at the workforce, I think this is one important lesson for me, because whatever is happening can change in an instant. And that's exactly what we've seen during COVID times as well and after. So I try my best to stay in the present, keep giving back whatever I have and whatever my experience has taught me. But at the same time, make sure that when I'm developing teams who have worked for me, and of course who have worked for the business, I make sure that I'm one of those leaders who's available, and more importantly is helping with the mentoring, coaching, but more importantly helping them with developing a career ladder for themselves, helping with their career progression path, so that they feel that they're contributing to the business but also to themselves. Because personal learning and grooming is extremely important for each one of us. We can always be contributing to the world vision, the business vision, but it's important to do that. And therefore, product leaders as well as people in the industry, for example, need to be there for each other. And I truly believe in the ecosystem, the community, as well as everybody who makes this. So sharing is very important for me. And I do share a lot of knowledge if I possibly can on social media through my posts, but also in through a lot of the forums that India FinTech Forum, for example, organizes through community events. And I truly believe that there's so much information and knowledge out there. It's for us to keep learning. So this is one of my strongest learnings from the last many years, where I've actually constantly kept upgrading myself, whether it's through formal certifications or through talking to mentors, and kept a little bit ahead of the curve, though I feel there's a long way to go.
I'm sure that the audience will definitely benefit from your advice. I thank Ms. Monica Jasuja to share her valuable insights with us and her professional journey. Have a great day ahead.
Thank you so much. Thank you, India FinTech Forum.